Welcome to the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on Rotogrinders, brought to you by Jock Market. Stop throwing your money away. It's time to check out Jock Market, the app where daily fantasy becomes a stock exchange. Buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money. Download now for a 100% deposit match up to $50 using the promo code GRINDERS. And get this, if you don't turn a profit this week, Jock Market is running back their first market guarantee to cover your losses this week. So download Jock Market in the app or Play stores or check out jockmarket.com. That's JOCKMKT.com and use the code GRINDERS for a 100% deposit match up to $50 on your first deposit. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender HD. If you don't follow me there on Twitter, joined by the man behind the numbers, the dials, he's got the hamsters running in those wheels for the models over at Advanced Sports Analytics. It's Stewart Gibson for an 11-game slate that features more than half of the games with 43 or under total. It's kind of weird for this year. A lot of times we've had weeks where, wow, we got like a ton of games with high totals and then a couple with low ones. Now we have a lot of games with low totals and only a few, if not one, with the highest total. Yet from a projection standpoint, it still seems very even, because from the salary perspective of some of these games, that do you have it in your tools that there are games that stand out far and beyond everyone else on the slate, or is it a little bit more balanced than I would have thought for these totals?
Yes, we got one game or one side rather, that's like really standing out in a big way, and then from there, fairly balanced. Yeah, I mean, the way it's shaking out kind of in our numbers as of now, like if you are a fan of vomit stacks and just playing, 2 to 5% owned type players as part of your stack, not, at least per our numbers, probably won't be a fun show for how I'm kind of thinking about the slate. We have the top 3 teams with regards to frequency within the top 1% are 3 of the 4 kind of highest ownership teams or stacks. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I think that could be, a fine way to play it. I mean, you look at last week, like with Tampa Bay, where they were kind of emerging as one of the 2 premier stacks, and Los Angeles being the other. And you kind of did well for yourself by just over indexing or being willing to go overweight what is already going to be a pretty popular stack. As of the way the numbers are shaking out right now, our kind of recommendation would be to not be too scared away by some of these potentially high ownership stacks, and be willing to really heavy up on some of the premier, I don't want to say premier game environments, because there's not really any one game environment that's like truly premier, but certainly, like you said, in the context of the slate, like some of these seemingly middling totals or middling game environments actually stand out as fairly strong relative to the alternatives. So that's kind of how our numbers are shaking out as of now.
Well, what I see from a perspective of player projection on an individual basis, a lot of the better values, I don't consider this slate to be like a heavy value slate. Like there are some guys that project a little bit better for their price than others, but those players don't happen to be in the best game environments. Like we're seeing stuff with the Chargers game with Keenan Allen out. We've got some, cheaper running backs that are on low total teams. I get the sense, and even quarterbacks, like we have Russian quarterbacks, cheaper Russian quarterbacks that don't play for the best of teams either, that I get the sense that the higher total teams, while they may be owned, may still not be higher owned enough, with people focusing a little too much on median projection and not enough on ceiling. So like I've been running through some lineups and I get a bunch of players from some of these low total games because, oh, they're a good value. You know, they're $700 underpriced. They're $400 underpriced. But you don't really get those values in some of these better game environments because there's no one that stands out from a median perspective to be like that great of a value. But from a ceiling perspective, I'd much rather take the better game environments. So I get the sense that if people that are focusing too much on median projections, that some of these lower total games may actually get over owned and the higher total games may actually not be owned enough.
Interesting. All right. Well, maybe as we kind of go through the games, we can kind of, bucket kind of the games or teams as, being interesting or compelling from kind of a, projects well, good value versus, this is a spot that doesn't necessarily have like a great median or mean projection, but, has kind of the ceiling that maybe some of these other spots do not.
Well, let's start with the game, the top tier game of the entire slate. That would be the Buffalo Bills at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's a 53.5 total. The Bucs are favored by 3.5. 28.5 implied total for the Buccaneers, 25 for the Bills. We have Fournette catching some on Fournette and Diggs as the owned players. We have Godwin and we have the Bucs receivers a little bit low. I mean, Godwin, I don't think is going to be 8.9% owned. I think more in the 15 to 17% range. But I mean, these guys are now priced up. I mean, Fournette 7,400, I think is perfectly fine. Diggs is one of the highest priced receivers at 8,100. Godwin 71. Evans is 66. Gronk is now 6K at tight end. Beasley ain't like cheap. He's 5,000. Dawson Knox is 5,000. I mean, like from a median perspective, this game stack is not like is not bad, but not like screaming value. But it is the best game environment on the slate. We have Allen as higher owned than Brady, and if you're going to tell me that I'm going to be able to get Brady at under 10% ownership and still be able to pair him with two guys, one of them being under 10% owned, like why wouldn't I?
Yeah, no, I mean we love this spot. I don't think it's going to be like, well, I mean, I guess our model suggesting that it will be under owned, but I don't think it's going to be like sneaky in any way. I mean, I would expect that, Tampa and Buffalo stacks are probably two of the, I don't know, 4 or 5 most stacked kind of teams. But yeah, I mean, I think a great spot, like you said, lacking a bit in terms of median projection, but the ceiling of some of these guys and really just either side of this game are, I think, as high as any. I mean, as evidenced by the game total. Yeah.
Which side would you prefer? Because I think that I could rely more on the Tampa Bay passing volume than being able to predict the Bills receiving touchdowns. I think Fournette is going to gain enough ownership that we may see more people playing like an Allen Diggs Fournette type of lineup more so than a Brady Evans, like Beasley type of lineup. Like to me, I think I could rely on the Bucs passing volume with Antonio Brown not in. Like Godwin, Gronk, and Evans are like clearly like the 3 guys, and they all seem to get enough volume. Obviously, Evans a little bit less, but he's more likely to get touchdowns. But on the Buffalo side, I mean, they could pass to like Gabe Davis. They got running backs. They got. I mean, it to me, I think it's more. I'm more sure of Brady's side of the passing game, and then I can mix up the the run back. Some lineups have Diggs, some lineups have Beasley, some lineups have Knox. Some lineups have, whoever, Emmanuel Sanders maybe. Then try to guess like Allen +2. It feels like I can make so many more combinations of Allen +2 than I can of Brady +2.
Yeah, we have a slight edge to Well, I mean, slight in terms of rankings. We have Tampa Bay appearing in the top one. Tampa Bay stacks appearing in the top 1% of lineups. Second highest rate, Buffalo at third highest rate. But yeah, we've got Tampa Bay at 1.35%, so 35% over kind of neutral, if you will, and then Buffalo at 16% over neutral. So I guess that is a fairly sizable gap in terms of kind of you know, uh, like numerative, I guess, kind of ROI or frequency and kind of that top tier of lineups. But yeah, both close. I mean, I think both projecting strongly from a, ROI consideration of range of outcomes, correlation, ownership. But yeah, I think I'm with you. That all makes sense, right? Like Tampa Bay is a good bit tighter. I think also just from like kind of pass frequency, Tampa Bay outpaced. I mean, both of them are the two of the three most pass heavy teams in the league relative to kind of expectation. But Tampa Bay is a pretty good bit ahead of the rest of the league. And then kind of there's this tier of like Kansas City, Buffalo, the LA teams that are solidly above, passing at a rate above expectation. But Tampa Bay, I mean, man, they're just like on another level right now with how they are, how pass heavy they're skewing. They're skewing. So yeah, it makes sense, I think, to kind of prefer that side. Does figure that the ownership will be a little higher. Well, I would say, I mean, maybe even significantly higher on the Tampa Bay side.
But not prohibitively high. I don't.
Yeah, no.
The thing with this game is that I think it's going to be one of the more owned games, but I still don't think it's going to be owned enough.
Right. Yeah. No. I'm right there with you. I'm not saying either. I don't really see any of like, I don't know, of these kind of top tier games as being prohibitively high. I'm just saying like there is going to be, I think, more leverage to the Buffalo side, but not sure that leverage is condensed in a way that you have much confidence about it, or I guess more confidence than you do about Tampa Bay side. So yeah, I'm with you. I like the Tampa Bay side, versus Buffalo, but yeah, I mean, I am happy going with the Buffalo side as well.
You're not concerned, like, to me, with the Buccaneers passing volume. Like, I'm not concerned that 2 6K plus receiving targets can't both get there. Like, I'm not concerned about Godwin and Evans together, even though 7,100 and 6,600, it's fairly hefty for the entire stack. But the Buccaneers, they're throwing. I mean, if they're throwing 45 times, like, yeah. I think they both could get there.
Yeah, and like it's also worth noting that Tampa Bay's throwing at an insane clip, and Buffalo is throwing at a pretty crazy clip as well. Like, I mean, I just think there's going to be a ton of plays run, and both these teams, I think you talked about last week how the Chargers are kind of dink and dunk, long drives. Both these teams are like swinging for the fences, more or less every play, or at least, once per kind of set of downs. This game just has potential unlike any other to just go massive. And yeah, you usually in some of these smaller total games like Seattle, they feel like a receiver pair where you kind of aren't super excited about playing those two expensive receivers. But I mean, yeah, you look at last week. I mean, Evans, Godwin, and Gronk all got there. And Fournette had a great game too. Like, it's just there are going to be so many plays run, so much potential for kind of big chunk plays and just high number of possessions, high plays, a lot of passes. Like, yeah, I mean, you just kind of mix and match. I think, Evans, Godwin, Gronk are kind of the key pieces. And, if Fournette don't love, I like playing Fournette with Brady because I think it's like one of the running back QB combos that are really palatable, but the ownership that he is coming in at probably less of a consideration or priority this week. Like I thought last week, Brady Fournette made a ton of sense because there's so much ownership on some of these cheaper guys, but with Fournette, yeah, projecting to garner a good bit of ownership, not so sure that that's going to be like a sneaky or kind of priority combo of players.
Okay, let's go to some other games. What's your first plus game of the week? And when we say pluses and minuses, on the show, we mean over expectation in comparison to their ownership. So not necessarily the best stacks, but stack comparable to what the market will play them at. So what's your first plus game?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's the game that's the side that's gonna be the most popular and has great value. I think our position, I guess, or at least what the numbers are suggesting, is that the ownership still isn't going to be high enough, and that's this Chargers side against New York. Obviously great value with the injuries, or I guess what COVID protocol for Keenan Allen. Gonna be popular. But we like being high on this game, even amidst the high ownership.
Does it matter whether or not Mike Williams plays? Because I mean, he's on the COVID list technically, but as long as he has negative tests through Saturday, he could play. Does it make a difference to you that we have a 6K Mike Williams, or then once you take out Williams, like, this team becomes even cheaper? And while you have this as a plus, I have this as a minus. And not because I don't particularly like the Chargers side. I have two concerns. One, are the Giants going to be able to put up a fight where I don't even know who the hell they're going to be playing at quarterback? Jake Fromm, maybe? I mean, like, I have no idea what's happening here. And I'm also concerned that the Chargers provide the best value on the slate. So I think Mike Williams, if he plays, one of the highest wide receivers. Eckler, one of the highest running backs. We may get Jalen Guyton as the cheap punt wide receiver. Jared Cook probably still gets a little bit of ownership at tight end. I just feel that with their medians, like, this is the example of a team that has a high median, but is the ceiling versus some of these other games on the slate worth the ownership? Because I think if you're jamming in median projections, Herbert stacks are going to come up. It's going to be Herbert stacks with Saquon Barkley as the run back. And I just think that combination, while I think it projects well, I think is going to be overowned.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's fair. Like I said, do expect it to be, so yes, of course, like, whether or not Mike Williams plays is going to have an impact. I have not run like the simulations for both scenarios. All I can say is that we have run them under the assumption that Mike Williams will play, and our numbers have been kicking out preference for combinations of like Herbert, Eckler, and one of the cheap receivers. Yeah, I mean, I like I said, haven't run the simulations on kind of the alternate scenario of Williams not playing. Like, of course, that will have an impact, both in terms of projection for the players around Mike Williams and in terms of the ownership that those guys will generate. So, I don't know, hard to like have, I guess, a quantifiable answer at this stage where we don't have kind of a clear answer on Williams. But yeah, obviously, whether or not Williams plays could shake up how we view this game in a huge way, naturally.
Okay, so I got a plus for you. It projects poorly from a median perspective, but I think the ceiling is there. Dallas at Washington. Okay, Gibson is going to be one, assuming McKissick is out again. Gibson is going to be one of the highest owned running backs at 6K. But like, all these other guys in this game are low owned. I mean, like, I don't think people are, with the value quarterbacks that we have, like Newton and Hill, then we got Brady and Allen towards the top. Like, who's playing Dak? So like Dak plus Cooper plus Lamb, like something plus Gibson. Like, you could still play Gibson. The weird thing is you could still play Gibson in these lineups with high ownership, because like, how much is Lamb going to be owned at 7,200? Godwin will get more ownership at 7,100. Amari Cooper is 5,900. Like, you got a lot of options here, and obviously there's more possible failure here. But even if you want to go super leverage and instead of playing Gibson as the run back, play McLaurin. But this game has a healthy total, And other than Gibson, I don't see much ownership.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Our numbers prefer the Washington side, going the route of like Heineke plus McLaurin plus with Logan Thomas out, like RSJ. Um, but yeah, no, it makes sense. Like solid, relatively strong total. Not going to get hardly any ownership aside from Gibson. Yeah, I'm right there with you. We have Washington as kind of uh the top one or two teams that are kind of outside this premier. And I'm not saying premier is in terms of like value or kind of our perceived like value relative to ownership, but there's one of the top teams that's not going to be in kind of this high bucket or a bucket of like high ownership stacks. Right there with you. Not quite as strong on Dallas. But yeah, see, like obviously, there have been points this year where Dallas's offense has been super explosive. So, see paths to that stack working out. And again, a lot of it's going to be conditional on probably not so much as like LAC conditional on Williams, but whether or not McKissic plays, I think is relevant because figures to if he does suck away targets from some of these receivers that we're talking about. And if he does, we'll probably lessen the ownership on Antonio Gibson, which, I think could chip into the allure of the Washington side.
Okay. Do you have any other pluses?
Yeah, so we've got a plus on just a defense that, we really want to attack. We've got a plus on the Broncos side. Do worry that spread is just really, really high, and there is, a pretty decent chance that Denver just gets up big and kind of goes into like this running shell. They're more or less neutral in how they kind of manage pass versus run relative to expectation. But yeah, I mean, Javonte Williams gonna sop up a good bit of ownership. Do wonder if going like with a Teddy Bridgewater stack could be an opportunity to get leverage against Williams. Does kind of feel like if you are going to stack Denver, you have to bring back someone on the Detroit side. It's not like Detroit's, just without Swift. Like there's kind of a shortage of guys to be super excited about bringing back. But I just do worry, like if Detroit doesn't show up, just Denver's not going to get pushed really in any sort of way that's useful for a stack. So I kind of have this pegged as like just the high leverage or one of the high leverage, sorry, not high leverage, high variance spots on the slate.
Right. I think Javonte Williams goes overowned with Gordon practicing. Like I'm not a big fan. I mean, maybe this ownership comes down. I think Judy is going to get some ownership. The reason I don't like the Broncos is because they got a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Like just to play, the stack of this, they got Fant there, they got Sutton, they got Patrick, Judy. I'm not a big fan. The Lions could keep up no matter what. Like, and then who do you play on the Lions? You have Jamal Williams, Josh Reynolds, St. Brown. It feels like this is the spot to go for like cheap one-offs, but I'm not enthused about. I would be more enthused if this game was in Detroit in the Dome than in Denver. But no, I can see from a lever if Javonte Williams is super owned, which with Gordon playing, I don't think he's going to be like absurdly owned. I can see the leverage implications here, but I don't consider this game a minus, but this is not a game that I'm targeting.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
Plus for me, I don't know why they wouldn't be a plus. Give me the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they're a little Jekyll and Hyde, right? The Chiefs are. I mean, if you told you this last year that on an 11-game slate with 7 games that have a 43 or less total, and Patrick Mahomes is going to be 5% owned, and the Kansas City Chiefs has a 28.75 implied team total. I know it's expensive, but why can't I, even if I just single stack or I play Pringle or something like that, do a Mahomes plus one of Hill or Kelsey plus Pringle, and I can run it back with Josh Jacobs, who's a fine value, is going to be one of the most highest owned running backs on the slate, because with everyone out and he's now catching balls out of the backfield, I'm not scared of the Chiefs defense. Why should the Chiefs be this low owned?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm right there with you. If we're going down our teams kind of with their frequency within the top 1%, we got this kind of clump up top with like Chargers, Bucks, Bills, and then Denver and Washington beneath them, and then Kansas City like perfectly in the mix as kind of a premier team, premier stack that is going to get a good bit of ownership, but is looking as of now like it's probably worth taking on, being overweight, I guess, that kind of ownership that you're projecting for them. So yeah, I like them a lot. Las Vegas, I think, is rich and kind of bring back options. You mentioned Jacobs. I think Hunter Renfrow is, perennially kind of like a solid value play. Maybe lacks like a true ceiling that you might be looking for with large field tournaments, but I think makes for a really strong small to medium field tournament play. And then of course, Josh Jacobs, significantly higher pass catching role now that Las Vegas is thin on receivers. Think he works fine with Kansas City team stack, bring back Jacobs, just getting the value there. And I think he's in a different role than he has kind of been labeled to be in the past, where he's this like ground and pound, run out the slow down the game, kind of establish the run type guy. At least in this small sample we've seen without Waller and Ruggs, looking like kind of a different piece. So I think that's a fine bring back option.
Right. The main concern with playing Kansas City stacks is finding the value to fit around them. I mean, like if you played Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill, like I don't know what you're playing in the rest of your lineup. Like that, to me, that's the main issue with the Chiefs stack. But I think that's the reason why they're more likely to be under-owned, because like how do you fit these guys in? And they're not the highest team. I mean, like the fact that we have Tampa Bay and Buffalo on the slate, like why do I have to pay this price when I could play cheaper? I could pay cheaper for stacks of similar team totals, and they're cheaper.
Yeah, and it's somewhat of a tough slate to find ways to fit the Chiefs, because there isn't a ton of cheap value that's compelling, or at least appears to be high confidence. But yeah, I mean, naturally there's maybe if you want to be under on Charger stacks, you could just take like the value offered to one of those receivers. It's just like a one-off kind of salary relief, so that you can get different with like a cheap stack. And I don't like, it's not gonna be like super different, but certainly lower than like a Charger stack or Tampa or Buffalo. Well,
Okay,
not certainly lower than those, but
how about your minuses? So what's a game that is going over-owned for its expectation?
yeah, so I think one of the it's hard for me to project how much people are going to try to stack them, but I do think Cam Newton is going to be a fairly popular play, and I would guess people are just going to see that. I think Cam's like a fine cash game QB, but would be pretty hesitant to try to stack him up as a tournament play with I guess you go like DJ Moore, maybe trying to go with kind of one of the Carolina running backs. I think fine with Cam as a cash game play, but I think he's probably going to go and just Carolina stacks are going to go a bit over-owned for a tournament. So that's probably a spot I'd prefer to be under.
Right. I have the Carolina side as a minus also, that, and also I'm never a big fan of the Falcons as like this is the game that I stacked a million different ways like 4 or 5 weeks ago that died. I just don't see a compelling reason to do so. Especially, I just don't play Cordell Patterson, and when he kills me, he just kills me, and just like that's just the way it goes. My minus is very similar to that minus, and that's the Saints Jets game. I think Taysom Hill is going to be very similar to Cam Newton, fine as a cash play. I I think Elijah Moore on the other side is a decent GPP play, but like, do you want to play the Jets? I mean, this game has a 42.5 total. Do you want to play a Jets game? Do you want to play a quarterback that like may not even have the grip to throw the ball anymore? I mean, I don't even know what mallet finger is, but I mean, I could see a lot of rushing in this game. Like, that's why it's like Taysom Hill. Like, I have no issue with in a vacuum. I also don't have any issue if you're going to go like Taysom Hill, Traquan Smith, like something like that to get a little bit different. But like to just stack this game, it's the Jets and the Saints. Like to me, I view this game as like how many plays are going to be run in this game.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got a minus on a similar game with just overall pace, kind of play count. Boy, I get excited when we finally have a week where like Cleveland and their opponent are just like very poorly rated. I don't think Cleveland's going to get that much ownership, but could see Baltimore getting owned a good bit. That would be a spot I think I'd like to be under.
But you're in agreement with the Saints and the Jets.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I think rushing quarterbacks. Well, I don't know. Because like, I don't know. I like Jalen Hurts in the right spots. Lamar Jackson, I frequently like in good spots. But yeah, it's just these offenses that they're on. Like, neither the Saints nor the Panthers are looking like a very dynamic offense, such that, right? I mean, like, I guess the thesis behind the rushing quarterbacks, especially like, Newton and Taysom Hill, I don't think. I mean, I guess we did see Taysom Hill get to 100 yards, but like, I don't think of them as having much like rushing bonus equity the same way that Hurts or Jackson have that rushing bonus equity. So you're kind of just like hoping for them to get multiple rushing touchdowns and kind of pairing it with like a passing touchdown or two. And I just don't know that these offenses are dynamic enough to really set those quarterbacks up for many rushing touchdown opportunities.
That's reflected in the team total. I mean, but I see a lot of games like we're describing Carolina, we're describing the Saints. To me, most of the games on the slate are like that. I take a look at Seattle, Houston, and I go, well, Houston sucks. And then like Seattle isn't playing well, but hey, you never know with Russ Wilson. But like the Seahawks run the lowest amount of plays. The Texans are now starting Davis Mills again. Like, what is the outlook of this game as a whole in comparison? Maybe throw some one-off secondary correlations, but like you would think like, oh, why don't I play Wilson, Metcalf, Lockett, Cooks? Like it makes sense. Or you play Everett in the tight end position instead of Metcalf or Lockett. And like, dude, if you've been doing that for the past 2 years, you've just been siphoning money out of your bankroll because Pete Carroll just wants to like have 38 plays the game. I mean, it's hard for me to see, barring like completely broken plays or Davis Mills throwing like 4 interceptions that set short fields up. Like what is the ceiling of the Seahawks when the play volume of this game comparison to, let's say, Tampa Bay, Buffalo is like the difference of like 25 plays, and that like you can't score fantasy points without plays, right? So it's like I'm assuming you're on the same page as me that Seattle Houston is one of those games where it's like,
I mean, on the same page with you. You got Seattle is kind of they're gonna get a decent bit of ownership, but yeah, I don't know, just the way like I know it's fun to talk about like the kind of moonshot like low owned vomit stacks and stuff, and it's even like I even enjoy talking about kind of the middling stacks that are going to get under owned, but the way it's setting up, at least the way it's coming out in our numbers, it's looking like there's going to be a lot of people that kind of spread out, not a lot, but not a lot on any one specific team, but I think there's just going to be a handful of lineups that get spread out across some of these low to middling games. And don't get me wrong, like sometimes there are middling games that look compelling, But as it's shaking out now, we're quite high on some of the clearly, strong stacks, and I think ownership is going to go that way. But I don't know. I think obviously there are times to take low ownership routes. I think the kind of research suggests like why that's the case, but I don't want to take try vomit stacks and kind of stack teams just for the sake of stacking a team that was low owned. I think if kind of these middling low owned teams are not looking interesting, or not looking like they're in potentially good game environments, or kind of the values not showing through for those players, or there's no projectable ceiling to be had, like sometimes kind of just got to go with these popular games that do have a true ceiling.
So I think another game that fits that bill is like Jacksonville, Tennessee. It's like I go yuck on that. The more interesting game, I mean, we've covered, I mean, pretty much all the games. I mean, we've mentioned all of them to some extent. This 49ers Bengals game, okay? I view this as a high variance game. I view this traditionally, these two teams would rather play slow and run the ball, right? Traditionally, right? So I expect to see a lot of Mixon, a lot of Mitchell, that type of thing. But these two teams also have very dynamic players in the receiving game, with Chase and Higgins, Samuel and Kittle, that these are big play guys. And, this total isn't low. I mean, this is the second highest total on the slate, 48.5, which isn't saying much, but I don't see, I mean, I think Mitchell may get owned. If I'm assuming that he plays, he's questionable. But like, who says Debo can't break the slate at 8,000? I mean, I know he's coming off of a week off with injury. Who says Jamar Chase can't break the slate at 6,900? Like, why can't I stack up Burrow or Jimmy G and hope this turns into a shootout?
Yeah. Yeah, we've got fairly good scores, particularly on the Cincinnati side. Kind of like T Higgins a good bit. He's usually a like perennially high owned player. Had the big week last week, and his price has kind of jumped up accordingly. I do wonder if that's going to scare some people off, and yeah, if so, could be. He's a weird guy where he is like burned people a lot this year at strong projectable value, kind of high ownership, and then as kind of the sentiment was starting to shift towards like, not T Higgins again kind of thing, just puts up a massive game, price jumps accordingly. And I do wonder if that kind of fear, just the memory of being burned by T Higgins is going to kind of drag with him up to this price point. And, we're not projecting a ton of ownership for him. Really any of these Cincinnati pass catchers. Yeah, I think an intriguing spot to go. Yeah, definitely from a mean projection standpoint, not super strong just because of the pace and kind of style that both these teams play at. But yeah, I mean, so what, like, I guess, the way that this game speeds up is just if both teams are scoring at an elevated pace, right? Like, yeah, and they just kind of, yeah, which could happen.
It's like you don't take the running backs and you play Burrow, Higgins, Chase, Samuel, or Kittle, or something like that. I mean, it's expensive, but I don't know. I mean, I don't consider this game to be plus or minus. It's sitting there, and it's the second highest total. And I don't think people are, I mean, it's going to be owned, but not much. I mean, this is one of those slates overall that the better spots, because of price and projection, I don't think are going to be as high owned as they should be for their ceiling. But like, as far as like, it's quite possible in your DK cash lineup that you have no one from the Bills Bucks game. And that would be perfectly fine. Like, you're playing Cam and Taysom, and you're playing Chargers, and you're playing Jacobs, and you're playing Barkley or something. I mean, like, you're playing Jamal Williams. And from a median perspective, that may be the best lineup. But from a, like, do I win a GPP with this lineup? No. And I think most of the time it's not like, oh, let me take out two players. It's like, no, let me take out all of them. Right? Let me play guys that don't project well median wise, but like a Dallas stack plus Washington, and then you find a cheap value somewhere, and you may have your lineup may have a lot of guys that are under 10% owned, and that may actually be a better lineup than the higher owned players on this slate.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like last week we kind of had, I mean, with the Michelle thing, like I just locked Michelle into all my lineups, and I think there have been weeks in the past where there's been kind of one or two high ownership guys that just like they were kind of just unfadable. It doesn't really seem like there are any, as it stands right now, like unfadable values this week. It does feel like one of those weeks where you could win with a lineup of all guys below 15%, as we're like the way it was last week with so much value at running back. You kind of, at least I felt, and I think we kind of came to the consensus on the show, like, yeah, you just got to mix and match with those high value guys. Understand that you're going to be rostering, at least one and probably a couple or even a few running backs who are going to be at this 20% mark, and just the value is too clear to pass up. And I don't know that this week, as it stands right now, there doesn't appear to be any like can't miss value. Guys you feel like you have to lock in. So yeah, certainly a fine week to kind of get weird, take some shots. But yeah, not take shots just for the sake of taking shots, but find your spots that make sense to take shots, and yeah, go there.
And people could find all of the stats, all of the optimal percentages and everything at Advanced Sports Analytics in your Substack, right? That should be going out later today.
Yeah, we'll probably send it out tomorrow, just because I had some stuff to tend to before I sign off for the day. But yeah, we'll put that out tomorrow with incorporating all the injury news that comes in at the end of the day today. It seems like a lot of the injury news kind of has a West Coast lean this week, so give it some more time to come in. Yeah, we'll have that out tomorrow with the this table that I'm kind of referencing at times. That'll be in there with just some thoughts. Like obviously I tend to take kind of a quantitative approach, and like I understand how the system works and try to I kind of get a sense of why the numbers show, or why the numbers could be showing up the way that they do, but I think it's always healthy to talk through the numbers that we're seeing, hypothesize why it is that they're turning out the way they are, and try to find spots where the numbers might just not be indicating what where the numbers could be lying a little bit to us. So yeah, we do all of that in the weekly Substack. Yeah, we'll be posting that on our Twitter account, so I think that's a perfectly fine place to look, and yeah, stay abreast of the drop of that.
And follow on Twitter at AS Analytics DFS, or Stewart Gibson for Stewart. You can find me on Twitter at BlenderHD. As always with the YouTube stuff, click that thumbs up button, give a like, give a subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit whatever you want on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast version on the Rotogrinders Fantasy Football feed, feel free, go ahead, rate and review on iTunes. But we'll see you next week on another edition of the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on Rotogrinders.com.